Hi, my name is Andrew Lippa, and I wrote the music and lyrics for the musical Big Fish. Thanks for putting on a production, and I hope these videos help you as you work on the score for Big Fish. First thing I wanted to talk about was the overall style and clarity of how to approach the score. For example, at the very beginning of the show, the first big song called Be the Hero that is sung by Edward Bloom at the beginning, he sings, "What if I told you you could change the world with just one thought?" Now, even that, which I'm doing just a couple bars of, you notice I'm really articulating. And you also notice that I'm not really Southern. And this is something that John August also has written in his notes to you inside the TRW materials. The score reflects that. So, for example, music like... there's nothing really Southern about that. When we get to the song itself, the main melody, be the hero of your story if you can. Be the champion in the fight, not just the man. Again, there's nothing terribly Southern about that. When you hear the original cast recording, which is on Broadway Records, and you can download that from iTunes or purchase it at Amazon.com or many other places, you'll hear that the orchestration tells you a little bit about the contemporary nature and the quality of the score to come. There are moments in the show, like Little Lamb from Alabama, which are clearly rooted in Grand Ole Opry quality on purpose. That's a bit of a silly thing that's sung by Sandra and her friends when they're younger, and so it's purposely silly music, quote-unquote silly music. And then there are moments that are a bit more Southern, that when the witch sings, for example, or when the giant sings, for example, there are moments that are laced with a Southern quality. This next section is about musical themes, and it's really about just an awareness of how the score is put together in the larger sense, the leitmotifs, if you will. It's a bit of a 19th century term, that run through the score. There are several of them. One of them is this second to the third. For example, in Daffodils. When we're in Daffodils, you hear daffodils, and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That carries on throughout that song. And that is actually introduced in the very beginning of the show. You notice at bar 7, in the very beginning, you hear... Now it's down the step. And again. Then I get funny. I play the major 7. But that idea, the doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo, is living throughout the whole score. At the very end of I Don't Need a Roof, she sings, "Stay with me." And again, that's daffodils. It's the same thing. It's also at the very end of the play when Edward Bloom dies, and Will finally says, "And that's how you go." And you hear the orchestra go. It's doing that same thing. It's singing daffodils. The orchestra sings daffodils, which is the thing that brings Sandra to Edward. So there's that musical story going on at the same time there's the text story going on. There's also the use of the sixth in the score. You'll hear it all over the place. For example, in Stranger, he sings Stranger, right? G to E, right? And that's really what that whole song is about. It's built on... and then again he comes back to it. And then... it gets very Jewish. And that, of course, is not the Southern thing. It's Southern Jews, you know, so like Southern Russia. That's another part of my, just built into my DNA, so don't get too Jewish there. In fact, in that, it really is easier to sing. You certainly don't want to geschrei, as my mother would say. I think it's pretty clear, and most people would avoid that in the song Stranger. That sixth, however, is also in, for example, when you hear Time Stops, and they sing, "Time stops." What happens is, there it is again. And in fact, rhythmically, it's related too. In Time Stops, it's 1, 2, and. In Stranger, it's Stranger. It's the same rhythm. 1, okay? Except, that's wrong. It's actually sped up. Stranger, it's twice as fast. in part because it's a fast song, and it's also, there's not a lot of thought behind that other than the fact that it sounded better faster. And, or at least it does to me. So that sixth exchange in the course of the score, even in how it ends, he sings, I know exactly how this ends. And he sings, it ends with you. That distance from the D sharp to the B is a sixth. And that keeps growing. Here's another sixth. Supposed to be, right? And that's actually one of the great teachers for me is Richard Rodgers. That has a Richard Rodgers quality only in the sense that it has that sort of chicks and ducks and geese better scurry when I take you out in the surrey, when I take you out in the surrey with the fringe on top. So you have so the melody keeps rising. The guy's about to die. He's about to go to heaven. So the melody keeps rising. And again, the sixth, that's stranger, time stops. There's something very spiritual and reaching in the notion of going to heaven. There's a lot of symbolism behind the number six, which has a lot to do with enlightenment and the idea of harmony, balance, sincerity, love. That's something that if you look up numbers or interested in anything like that, the sixth, or the number six, has to do with those things. So that was a happy accident because I didn't choose it because I didn't go looking at numbers and say, what number means sincerity and love? Although maybe I'll do that on my next show. This question comes up a lot when I do master classes, and it's the question of what I'll call today rhythmic looseness versus rhythmic accuracy. When do I like things to be rhythmically exact, and when do I like them to be free? It's hard to know, but here are a couple guidelines. One of them is the accompaniment is always going to be strict, unless it's not supposed to be. So for example, in a song like Out There on the Road, take a journey through the sky. It's clearly to the beat. My foot starts stomping. It should have drums going. If you can have drums in rehearsal, that's really fantastic because it will really help your actors and your dancers. A song like I Don't Need a Roof, I mean, right there's no click, and I'm not going to want to be on a click. That's very loose and free, right? And it wants to be accordion-like. Vocally, the question is, when can I be free and when do I have to be exact? So if you take a look at the music in I Don't Need a Roof, for example, just looking at the end of the verse, bar 18, she sings, what's written on the page is, here's where I end and begin. I never wanted Kate Baldwin to sing it that way, and I wouldn't want you to sing it that way. What I want you to do is start the word here's on the downbeat, and I wanted to get to the syllable gin of begin on the downbeat as it's written. What you do in the middle, as long as you sing the right pitches, is really up to the actor. So for example, here's where I end and begin. So you understand that what I'm doing is I'm shaping the phrase as an actor, and I'm allowing the rhythmic component of the song to land in all of the little marker spots. You wouldn't start I Don't Need a Roof the first time you sing it after the downbeat. I don't want you to be back phrasing. I want you to start it on the downbeat. I don't need a roof to say I'm covered. You notice I fudged that a little bit, but the downbeat, I don't need a roof to know I'm home. Again, I'm going to start with the dot. There could be, then I'm on my own, a single shingle dangling overhead. Again, I'm with it. Now I'm not. Don't need a roof to make my bed. And I think through that illustration you could see how I do it. I'd be really good in this part. You see how I do it is that the beginning of the phrase is important, and usually the end of the phrase is important. In this song, the end of the phrase is okay to be back phrased. But it's about placing the book markers. What are those things called? Remember those two things? What are they called? The book things. You know, that whole book thing. What are they called? I don't remember what they're called. The book things. Maybe they're called book things. And that compresses the phrase. It holds it. It gives it some wall. I start here and I end here, but what goes on in the middle is a little freer. And stranger, I'm feeling stranger than I've ever felt before, and so much more different, right? Again, start on the downbeat, and then blend, what's the list? Different, like something old is joined with something new. It still feels true. Downbeat. I'm passing through the light that every parent does. Again, etc. I forget the lyrics even though I wrote them. It's about starting in the right place, let it be rhythmic as it needs to be, but the actor guides it with the text. So if you were going to speak it, stranger. I'm feeling stranger than I've ever felt before. So, stranger, I am feeling stranger than I've ever felt before. Right? That's not what the music says. The music says, to sing it that way, because then it's really like a robot. Stranger, I'm feeling stranger than I've ever felt before. And it also starts to sound like radio, like, you know, sounds like pop music. And there's a pop component in the writing, but the theatrical part should always win, which is the acting. The actor should win. Did you hear that, Mom? Let's talk about the short note. I talk about this with singers all the time. Phrases where there are obvious long notes. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough. We're going to go to star and bow. That's have yourself a merry little Christmas, in case you didn't know. I didn't write that one. I wish I did. And the obvious notes are the ones you want to stay away from. Now this sounds counterintuitive. Let's look at Little Lamb from Alabama. This is bar 5. When the singers begin, they sing, shim, shim, I'm a little lamb from Alabama. Now you think of Alabama that's where we're heading, right? This is like middle school stuff. Shim, sham, I'm a little lamb from Alabama. But really, what you want to concentrate on are the notes that are neglected. I always say love the orphan is what I'm talking about, the orphaned notes. So it's really the and the tull of little. Shim, sham, I'm a little lamb I'm a little lamb. If you accent and tull, what you get is, especially with 3 women, you hear the phrase better. Shim, sham, I'm a little lamb from Alabama. Right? Without accenting it like I just did. But it's the la of Alabama that wants the love, not the a. The a is going to take care of itself. Everybody's singing on a higher note than, or at least the highest note they've sung so far. And then it stretches into the next thing. So it's the la of Alabama. Alabama. Make sure that you love the orphaned notes. The ones that we're going to brush over are the ones that you want to actually pay attention to. Take a look at how it ends. He sings, I know exactly how this ends. It's always these pickups that are going to be the really big challenge for the actor. It ends with you. Again, it ends with me. It ends the way a story's ending is supposed to be. So it's always about you, and I needed to warm up before this. You, 2, 3. It ends with me. Buddha, boo, the high note. It ends the way, right? So it seems. Now, I think you're probably going to get the point. It's always the one that you don't think it's going to be. It's sometimes the word you don't think it's going to be, or sometimes it's the word, but it's on a tiny, tiny note that's not the heartbeat of the phrase. It's always that spot that should get a little more attention. This next section is what I call fit the actor. Now, TRW makes it very clear to you that you're not to make any changes in the text or the score. And that's true. We wrote a show that we believe in and that we believe is exactly the show we would like you to be presenting. Now, you know and I know that you may not have the dancers you need to do the long extended dancing sequences, and you may need to cut some of the dance music. And we also know that everybody does that, and cutting a little bit of dance music isn't the end of the world. There's also something that you can do that TRW can help you with, which is keys. You don't have to be married to a key that doesn't work for your actor. If you have the best actor to play Will Bloom, but he can't sing Stranger in C major, then put it in B major or B flat major. Anything lower is probably going to be gross. There's also the problem of piano range. Like the minute, if you go anything beyond a whole step, suddenly what I wrote down low on the piano is going to suddenly be really muddy and icky, and you're going to have to rethink where your hands go and all that kind of stuff. If you want to do that and you're good at that, do it. Use your common sense. If you hear something and that feels okay because that's the original key. If we're here, so whatever key we're in, we're getting a little muddy. If it gets any farther than that, it starts to get really like, ooh, that's getting low in the piano, and you might want to revoice it, or you've got to find another actor, obviously, if that's not right. What's super important to me is not if Stranger, which is a self-contained song for a soloist, is in another key is great, that's fine. What's really important to me are the relationships between keys inside songs. So for example, in Time Stops, the difference between G major, which is, I have to look it up here. The difference between G major when Edward is singing, and then at 23 when we go to B major, that's part of the composition. So when he sings, now I don't think that way at all, time stops, that's composition. That's not, I don't care about, that's not if I don't care about the keys. I do care about the keys. So those key relationships, and then getting out of B major back into G major for Sandra, again, that key relationship inside a song means a great deal to me. I don't want you to change those. But if you have to change, I don't need a roof if you have a soprano who sounds better up a whole step. And if in your face, if that G is too low for her like it would be for me, if you cast me as Sandra, you'd have to put it up a whole step. In your face, I can fake an A with a nice microphone like Wendy. Let's talk about riffing. Big Fish isn't a show that you would think there's a lot of riffing in, and there isn't, and there shouldn't be. So, I'm watching you. There shouldn't be a lot of riffing. Now, you're going to hear on the recording, Norbert Leo Butz, he sings a couple notes that don't exist on the printed page. A couple is fine. For example, in Out There on the Road. You can pine your life away, wishing things were better. So far, so good. Waiting here for Judgment Day while knitting you a sweater. But I believe that kind of life won't set your spirit free. That's what Norbert does on the record. Do I care? No, it sounds good when he does it. I like it. He's making a point. It sounds good on Norbert. So, the challenge is, I don't mind a little bit of changes in the pitch if it sounds good on the person singing it, and if it's got a good reason, and I didn't tell you how many ands there are going to be, and you don't overdo it. So, for example, when you introduce the melody at bar 10, sing the melody! You can take a journey through this country's flesh and blood. Now, did I sing every pitch exactly? No, because I did a little thing. Stylistically, if you slowed it down, you can make... I'm not going to do that. You can take a journey through this, right? It's a little blue, that's all. You can take a journey through this country's flesh and blood. On a ride past countryside and Mississippi mud. Still, it's the printed note. Hit the street with 2 big feet to bear your heavy load and live life out there on the road. Yeah, did I put a little embellishment on it? And actually, Norbert goes, on the road. If you do anything Norbert does, I'm fine with it. Or Bobby Steggert, or Kate Baldwin. You do what they do, that's going to be fantastic. Welcome to Broadway. But if you want to do your own thing, go ahead and do it, but don't do it at the expense of storytelling. That's a really big one. Mariah Carey would not be good in a musical. I'm going to get so many letters. Start Over is another example. If Don Price starts riffing, I will come and personally knock him off the stage. Edward's not a savior, Edward's not a saint. And I even put it in, I put that little blue note in there. If he starts going, Edward's not a savior, Edward's not a saint. If any of that happens, seriously, I'm coming to get you. So this next section I like to call to pedal or not to pedal. Now, if I were to write in the score everywhere that I wanted you to pedal or not pedal, there'd be a lot of information on the page and way too many times. In the lettered versions that we publish, the folios of my scores, and Big Fish is one of them, I will put a lot of indications about pedaling and not pedaling. Here, I want you to use your common sense. So for example, take a look at Showdown. This is bar 14 when the vocal comes in. It's written with a 16th rest in the bar at the end of the measure. You hear, you see this man, this tired man, written this separate. Some people are going to have the tendency to do this. Some people will do that. Don't be that person. Okay? It's really important that you think about context and style. Stranger, I'll go back to that. How I keep banging the C's in my pinky. That's, there are no accents in the bar, but it's the pinky that's all about that phrase, right? Right? It of course wants to be pedaled lightly. Okay? This kind of stuff. My foot's keeping time. Don't you dare. I didn't use a pedal yet. Still didn't pedal. I hate that pedal. Still nothing. You don't need it. Too deep. People get lazy and scared and forget to use organ fingering, right? Still haven't used it. Accusing me. What exactly does it, fellows? Still don't need it. Nothing. I don't need the So the point is, if you keep your fingers on the keyboard and you really practice your organ technique, you're going to be pedal free. And it's going to be good. It helps with the energy of the scene. It helps with the consistency of time. You notice I often do this, which annoys my neighbors. But it is what is intended in the style of the music. In I Don't Need a Roof, obviously you want to do... It's like playing Schubert, okay? The same thing is true of Be the Hero, right? Exactly, okay? So you can start to figure out the difference. Out there on the road, no pedal needed. You don't need it, okay? So you can do it bit by bit. Another example is, it looks like it might want to be pedaled, but it shouldn't be. Bar 32 of Red, White, and True. When you hear the Krupa drums before it, and we have this, right? If I played that with pedal, you hear how sloppy and messy that is? The girls are dancing, right? Notes, which I should be doing, but I am trying to illustrate a point, and I think I have done it, haven't I? So this final thing, I'm just going to let you into a little Broadway lore. Mary Mitchell Campbell, the music director and conductor of our show, and our pianist for a long time named Paul Starova, and we used to do this giggly thing that was sort of like a German pop band from the 80s. In the song What's Next, Will Bloom sings, Edward Bloom, I'll take you swim through danger in the world. What was in the heart that beats inside you? And he goes on from there. And in rehearsal, and then during the show, Mary Mitchell would be upstage because the band was on a big platform upstage, all the way hidden upstage. I used to look up at the monitor where she could not see me, but I used to turn and look at the monitor if I was in the front of the house, and I would do this with her. Even during performances. Sorry, Susan Stroman. It went like this. Edward Bloom, I'll take you swim through danger in the world. And we used to do this. We used to do this at every performance. Even during the making of the recording of Big Fish, Mary Mitchell was over there and I was in the booth and I was watching and I was really listening as I do and often close my eyes and I looked up when it got there and I went, so there you go. So do your performance. Don't sing that on stage, but you can do it in the corner. Thanks for putting on a production of Big Fish. John August and I really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to coming to see your production. You never know, we might come. Better be good.